Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. Tonight we'll delve into the heart of upcoming elections in India and Indian politics, as well as Modi's policies towards minorities as well as opposition. Over 970 million voters will be participating in this election, which makes around 10% of world's population. And this 6-week-long election will be starting on April 19th. And of course, in this election, most of the surveys are predicting a win for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu nationalist BJP. What it means for India and India's social fabric, as well as for minority rights in India, we will be exploring in today's program. Also, when we look at opposition is accusing Modi government that it is using the federal investigative agencies to silence opposition. What it means for India's democracy and also India's standing in the international arena, we will be exploring in today's program. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Dr. Muhammad Arif, who is human rights expert. Welcome to the program. And we are joined online by Dr. Asma, who is expert in international affairs. Welcome to the program. Dr. Arif, when we look at today's India, of course, we see that Modi's policies are, of course, Hindu-led, and this means that a crackdown on minorities has been going on for quite some time now. What do you make of all this situation for India's democracy?
I think it is not today's concern. Rather, if we go back in the history, it started when Modi was CM of Gujarat in 2002.
True.
And they actually introduced anti-minorities policy since then, and challenging the secular vision of India. So then after 2014, it wouldn't be wrong to say that they have created a second phase of the state of India, which is totally anti minorities and anti-opponent doctrines, policies are visible at the surface of the political stage as well as at legal fronts. For instance, if you can recall, in 2019 Delhi riots, Muslims were specially targeted. And it was, I would say, first time ever in the history of India that they have introduced the law which created discrimination. Otherwise, every state which has ratified the International Human Rights Conventions, they are obliged to introduce anti-discriminatory policies. But in the case of India, it is a unique example in the world, and especially in the Southeast Asia, that the state itself has introduced anti-discriminatory law in the form of.
And how do you view the implications on minority communities on such laws? And also when we look at the textbook, of course, history is being renewed in Indian textbooks as well. Also, there are bans being imposed on madrasas as well. So what are going to be the implications on the Muslims and other minorities living in India?
Yes, only Muslims are not victims of this anti-discriminatory policy or anti-intolerant policy. Rather, if you look into the legal documents, there are 6 minorities recognized by the law, especially Minorities Act of 1992. Those include Muslims, Christians, Jains, Zoroastrians, Buddhists. So they all are suffering from these policies, especially after the Modi's takeover. So Muslims are the prime victim if we look at the history and the riots. And the at second level, Christians are the victims. Why these both minorities are being victimized? Because in Hindutva doctrine, it is considered that they don't belong to Holy Land of India. And the other communities still they believe, they consider them that they belong to this holy land. So they are also trying to assimilate other minorities as well into greater
They're trying
Hinduism.
to rewrite the history at large.
Yes,
of course, we will be elaborating on the legislations in regards to that as well. But Dr. Asma, when we look at the reports, of course, they are describing India as a flawed democracy. What do you make of these reports, and also the allegations that are being made on Modi, calling him an authoritarian leader?
Thank you for asking such an important question. But the first thing is that international institutions who measure the quality of democracy across the globe, they are not calling India flawed democracy, but an electoral autocracy. And that too in the recent VDM Varieties of Democracy report of 2024, they called India the worst electoral autocracy who is sliding down the fastest on the path of dictatorship. So this is the reality of Modi's policies in India, and this is the reality of New Bharat, which is in Modi's rebranding it with this name. So definitely, but when we analyze all this situation, Modi's policies towards minorities or towards this other social groups and opposition leaders, of course. So one thing which you ask me, what characterize it, what is the tagline of it, and that is Modi or BJP's lack of acceptance for alternate opinion, which we can call difference of opinion, because Modi cannot tolerate difference of opinion and multiple viewpoints on a certain subject. And that is why, by hook, by crook, by using state machinery, by utilizing propaganda tool, by controlling public's minds through media, through movies, through dramas, through actions, that is being Modi is trying to reduce and shrink the space for all alternate voices which tend to, or which who dare to disagree with Mr. Modi and BJP's government. And this starts when the I can call different remind you of different events, such as when Modi regime cancelled the Indian citizenship of renowned internationally acclaimed Professor Ashok Sawai, when Mr. Modi didn't allow, actually the Kashmir files is when the Kashmiri Pandit professor was not allowed to enter India because she is Dr. Natasha Kaul. She is a critique of Modi regime. When Rahul Gandhi, son of Rajiv Gandhi and Indira Gandhi, whose family did a lot for India, Mr. Rahul Gandhi was sentenced for 2 years via lower court for under the accusation of defaming Mr. Modi. When Andri Kajriwal is arrested, have you ever heard in any civilized world that a chief minister was arrested by the prime minister in a democratic state? And Mr. Andri, Ms. Kajriwal, he's not the first one to be arrested. He is the second chief minister. The first one was the Jharkhand's chief minister. And let me share with you that during the 8 years of Mr. Modi, 150 opposition leaders or the politicians who belong to opposition, they have been arrested or called or been persecuted by the regime. And this reminds me, when BBC made Gujarat Files, then Indian authorities raided even BBC's office, news
Right.
office in New Delhi. So this
Right.
is the true face of India right now, where minorities and dissenting opinions, no one is safe from the clutches of brutality of Modi regime.
Right, of course, there is shrinking space for freedom of expression, and also the accusations made by and allegations made by the opposition leaders as well. But Dr. Asma, how do you see the role of India alliance in this regard? This regard that, of course, 24 parties have made this alliance against Modi, but still Modi is going to be winning this election. What does it says about the role of opposition as well? Do you think that the only reason for that is the fear mongering done by Modi, or because most of the opposition parties have become irrelevant in today's Indian politics?
See, Modi is applying all the tactics which are pre-electoral election engineering. It has freezed the accounts of Congress, even political accounts, and they cannot spend it on election campaign because their accounts are frozen. So India, the opposition parties alliance is not very active, or their space of maneuvering has been reduced by Mr. Modi through different tactics. And what India could do, the when the Kejriwal was arrested, and this perception that Modi is coming back for the third time, that is also been created by the propaganda machines or mills of BJP, because this shows the desperation. I was reading somewhere that the arrest of New Delhi's chief minister is a sign of the desperation of Modi regime to come back for the third time in power. This shows that because Mr. Kejriwal does not play his political cards from the prism of secularism. So he's the one who has this capacity and ideology to talk to communicate to common Hindu men, and those common Hindus, illiterate, ignorant Hindus, are the vote bank of BJP and Modi, and that is what
Of course, he is
Modi would
considered a
never allow
strong.
anyone to snatch it.
Of course, he is considered a strong opposition voice. But what about the rest of the alliance?
Rest of the opposition leaders, they spoke in favor of Kejriwal. They said it is unacceptable, but they are unable to launch any resistance movement, any peaceful demonstration to question, to stand against the authoritative actions, brutal actions, non-democratic actions of Modi. This is the biggest reality. When we see Rahul Gandhi has this Bharat Yatra plan, it was a very good move to utilize, mobilize public against the brutalities and non-democratic actions of Modi regime. But Rahul Gandhi is alone, and recently he announced to start another in India Yatra with his sister Priyanka Gandhi. But these are the I see that the politicians or political opposition in India, they are somehow unable
Right.
to combine their power. Mamata Banerjee is very active in Bengal, but all those opposition voices have not been accumulated into one by starting one common opposition peaceful resistance against the Modi regime. So this is
Right.
what we see that lacks in right now in Indian political realm.
Right. So, Dr. Arif, when we talk about, of course, this polarization and attack on minorities, how do you see that this is going to be impacting democratic values and, of course, its impact on the social fabric within India? Also, we see a lot of grassroots movements emerging within India.
I think it is drastically implicating the minorities living in India in a very negative terms and connotation, as standards set by the United Nations and the other declarations like Durban declarations and declarations on minorities. So they have set certain parameters that every state should ensure the existence of minorities. They must ensure equality and protection of the minorities. They must ensure protection of their cultural rights. So in case of India, we see that all these aspects are in severe danger. So the people belonging to minority communities are losing their lives. If we take example of only Delhi in 2019, 53 people were killed, and out of those 53, 40 were Muslims. Then in the same manner, they are losing their jobs, so they are not finding any equal opportunity. So they are losing their religious rituals, they are losing their freedom of expression, not only by the state but also by the community, which is instigated by the state itself. So this is the very alarming situation.
Right, but if India is in violation of these significant human rights conventions, do you think any action could be taken against India, and what sort of action should and what forums could take action against India regarding, of course, the persecution of minorities?
Yeah, forums are there, especially the Human Rights Council, which review human rights record of each country which is member of the United Nations after every 4 years. So that is then appropriate forum to be utilized by the other states who are champion of the democracy and of minority rights. And secondly, yes, states are also coming forward, especially I would here quote example of US State Department has issued a report in 2022. They have categorized the violation of human rights by the Indian state, by the Indian authorities. If, for instance, I take example, they have quoted that extrajudicial killing went on an increasing trend by 12%. So only in 1 year, more than 2,000 people were killed, and the custodial conditions, I mean when they were in judicial custody. So what does it show? It shows that there is political victimization. When authorities themselves are killing the people, it means there are political victimization. So state is being used against the minorities and against the people who are marginalized. And the second example is that the CM of West Bengal, Banerjee, she also claimed that central government is using the tool of political victimization. So there are serious signs, and these are not being ignored by the world.
Opposition members are saying that, of course, that Dr. Asma also alluded to earlier, that 150 plus political leaders have been victimized since 2014. But how do you think, what can be done by international organization? Because like you mentioned, there are a lot of reports coming in this regard. But are there some concrete actions that could be taken in that regard?
Yes, of course. Like now the human rights mechanism introduced by United Nations has changed over the decades. Now they are more proactive. Now they can introduce sanction regimes. Now they can reprimand the states. So there is a need to use those forums appropriately.
Can you elaborate on some of these mechanisms and what kind of bodies or countries or these minority groups or human rights groups could go to these appropriate forums in this regard? Because there are a lot of voices, but now like the spaces are shrinking within India, so it might be difficult for them to raise voice.
The most vibrant forum is the Human Rights Council. Anybody, any organization can submit its shadow report to that council, and they do consider it. There is a working group comprising 10 to 14 countries, and they issue special reporters to that state if violations are reported. Then in coming future, we have another forum that is called the Beijing Declaration. So under Beijing Declarations, the states have also pledged to protect the rights of the vulnerable groups, especially women, transgenders and minorities. So that forum can be used by the states. Then we have another forum, ASEAN or SARC. SARC has also introduced some human rights mechanism that can be utilized.
Is already kind of dead.
But that can be utilized. The forum is there. That is the legal entity. The organizations can use that forum by issuing petitions and by filing the complaints that can be used. Although the forum cannot use unilaterally against a state, but that those can be reprimanded through special reporters and reports.
Right. So, Dr. Asma, how do you view this situation in which India, being a secular country, and of course the role of religion in today's India's politics?
Number one, I would like to reaffirm my point of view that India was never been a secular country. If Congress would be a secular party, Qaeda Muhammad Ali Jinnah would never have been joined Pakistan, this Muslim League, and worked for Pakistan. So it was the policies or ideology of discrimination by Congress and Hindus, of course, that Pakistan uh, came into being. So, but yes, Congress was much mild, educated version of radical Hindutva mindset. Their packaging of their ideological thoughts was very remarkable. That world was believing actually that India is a secular country. India has a soft image, the yoga and all those colors and these things, and that became identity of India instead of the radical ideology or other issues, because we have to keep it in mind that the Sikh massacre happened during Congress regime. Indira Gandhi was killed. The wars against Pakistan occurred. Kashmir was occupied under Nehru when in India. So Congress is, we cannot give a clean chit to Congress at all, but definitely Congress, and I've read so many articles where the authors wrote that Congress is a B team of BJP. But yes, definitely there is a difference of approach. Congress is quite educated and cultured in approaching different things. You can see how India's external minister behave on international forum. I was reading that he is the worst external affair minister India had, because he is so rude on international forums,
In diplomatic
and
language, he would
diplomacy
use very
needs diplomatic reactions.
right,
But
right. So
this is not going anywhere. Under Modi, I feel as a society, as a nation, as a state, India is on a nosedive, unfortunately, because a big country who is homogeneous, heterogeneous, where where so many, like 32 national languages exist, in order to keep that country united and build a nation out of it, what is most required, that is democracy, because democracy can keep all ethnic religious groups together and build a nation out of it. But what how Modi is imposing majoritarianism on Indian minorities and opposition parties, that is a big question mark even on the identity of India, Bharat. So we have to see it, because Modi's politics is the politics of populism, it is the politics of majoritarianism, it is the politics of appeasement of radical Hindu vote bank. And that is why to get that appeasement, if Modi has to support killings of innocent Muslims, the Gauraksha, the Citizen Amendment Act, the all the or even if Modi has to constitutionalize discrimination in India, he had done it. Every time Modi's
right.
report card for election is based on how much badly he treated minorities and opposition parties in India.
Of course, of course. And when we talk about using state machinery against opposition and against minorities, how do you view the role of course, enforcement directorate in recent, of course, political landscape? And also, how do you view the role of opposition parties presenting a united or failing to present a united front against Modi's policies?
Very important question, I would say. And this question reminds me that when Modi was using state machinery, and that specifically bulldozer against the opposition parties, against the alternate voices, in even in illegally Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, then people were saying that for forthcoming election, BJP should have bulldozer as their electoral slogan or electoral sign. So this is how Modi is using state machinery. And this also, few days back, retired air chief, who was chief of Indian Air Force during Modi regime, after retirement he has joined Bharatiya Janata Party. What does it depicts? What does it says? It says that how state machinery has been I would say joining hands or joined hands with the BJP radical Hindu vote bank for their survival. So somehow the military and civil bureaucracy in India cannot survive until they have the goodwill of BJP. And to get the goodwill of BJP is the way to get that goodwill is to show more hatred, more brutality towards the vulnerable communities in India so that the Hindutva vote bank can be happy with you.
Well,
State machinery, you see Supreme Court, how Indian judiciary has become kangaroo courts during the
true.
BJP regime, how Supreme Court is only a rubber stamp to legitimize all non-democratic actions of Mr. Modi and BJP.
Right, right, of course. So, Dr. Asma, how do you foresee the recent arrest of course, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal leading up to the elections? Do you think that it could gain some public sympathy for Mr. Kejriwal as well?
Definitely, it would gain public sympathy. It will give an
And it
impression
could
that how
backfire in the long
desperate.
run for Modi, it, because he was one of the strongest
Kejriwal
opposition voices.
Kejriwal is already a threat for Modi because when you see BJP has could the where BJP could not win the election, the state assemblies, there in some of them, Aam Admi Party won the elections and they were in majority. So Modi considers them Aam Admi as an opposition, and arrest of a sitting chief minister shows that how desperate, how perturbed, how passionate Modi and BJP is to win the forthcoming elections at any cost. And because right now, for the third term after 8 years, incumbency factor can go against BJP. BJP people were saying, the political analysts, that BJP doesn't have solid ground to show to the people that what they have achieved during those 8 years. Now recently the price of Indian rupee fell lowest in recent history vis-a-vis dollar. So how to satisfy people? I was reading the first election, the BJP won for economy, the second for hatred and threat from Pakistan and Muslims. And now for these elections, we don't know what would be the premise of Modi regime to win election. Would they again? I was reading a statement of a famous political leader in India, and he was saying that maybe Modi can have an attack. Modi can manufacture a stage, an attack on Ram Mandir or something like this to flare up the radical Hindu sentiments against Muslims, against Pakistan, to win the forthcoming election. So Modi
Of
is
course.
thinking in multiple terms. We know the governor of illegally Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir stated that how Modi regime staged the Pulwama attack. So
Of course, in
there are so many
2019, in
things
lead
that
up to the elections, of course, this has been the history of BJP's politics. Of course, so there are still threats of false flag operations by the Modi government. So let me take the discussion to the studios. Dr. Arif, how do you see the role of civil society and human rights organization within India in regards to human rights violations? And specifically, I want you to address the recent ban in one of the Indian states on madrasas. And of course, a lot of students were studying in these and now they have nowhere to go. So how do you see this?
Yes, the first part of your question is that what role are being played by the human rights activists and the organization. Yes, they are very much active and they are vocal against these atrocities and oppressions imposed by states, especially BJP-led state and their associated organization like VHF and RSS. Uh, Actually, they are trying to stop the doctrine of RSS, which is acclaimed publicly that India is for Hindus. and what we call the Hindu Rashtriya. So the leftist and the human rights activists are time and again knocking at the doors of legal fronts and at the international community to stop India from persecution of the minorities, especially the Muslims and the Christians, whom they considered alien to the India. Secondly, they are also trying to protect the rights of those communities which are not considered as alien but are considered belonging to Holy Land, like Buddhists and Zoroastrians and Jains. What they are attempting to try them to assimilate with mainstream Hindus and Hinduism. So those marginalized groups are also scared of such policies. And the second part of your question was that madrasas are being banned. Yes, of course, because they feel potential threat from the Muslim community, as Dr. Asma was referring, that it is also a political stunt, you may say, to gain the sympathy of illiterate Hindus and the illiterate voters who are already radicalized by the associates of BJP like RSS and VHF. So this can be a manipulation, a political manipulation to gain the sympathy of those Hindus which are radicalized already. Secondly, yes, they feel potential threat from the Muslims because Muslims are the largest minority in the India. So they are the potential threat to them, and to some extent, yes, Muslims also do resist in some angles. They are vocal, especially when citizenship laws were enacted. The Muslims are very vocal, and in the same manner when constitutional article 370 was abolished by the India, so Muslims were on the Muslims were on the streets. So they are considering Muslims as a potential threat. So they are trying to curb those thoughts and freedom of expression.
And briefly, Dr. Arif, could you also briefly compare it to situation of human rights in Pakistan, because Pakistan is an Islamic republic and India is a secular nation. How do you compare minorities being protected in Pakistan in comparison to India?
I think there is no match. In Pakistan, we although use the word minority, but they have all privileges and perks, rather some more privileges than the majority. They have special quotas in the jobs. They have no
now
discrimination.
They are in parliament as well.
They are in parliament as well.
Deputy Speaker is
and they have not only quota in the parliament, but now they are being elected against the general seats in the parliament as well. So minorities are very much protected and they are happy, and we don't have any sort of voice against state policies that is being that those are being discriminated. The Minority Commission is working. The Pakistan is among only 6 countries in the world who have their own Ministry of Human Rights. So we are among those only 6 countries. So Pakistan is very adamant towards protection of rights of its citizens as well as the minorities.
Right. So coming back to elections in India, Dr. Asma, how do you see the role of corporate funding in Indian elections, especially the allegations by opposition that Modi is, the way Modi government is using this corporate funding?
Definitely, corporate funding and the misuse of public funds, and then returning them favors to the corporate giants of India. That is a big question mark on the I would say for on free and fair possibility of free and fair elections in India, because it means that this whole bond scandal is depicting that you scratch my back and I will scratch yours. And here the question arises that who would protect the interests of common man? We have seen that the farmers movement, farmers in poor farmers in India are committing suicides, demonstrating on roads. They were sitting on roads for one whole year, and Modi was unable to realize their pain and address their concern, only to appease the corporates or his political donors or funders. So this is the grim reality right now of Indian so-called democracy and electoral politics. So definitely, and we have seen that how this, for example, Mr. Adani, how he was involved in international scams, financial scams, and still he is favorite of BJP. And at that time we were unable to see that why he's favorite of BJP. But now after this bond scandal came to the light, and we are reading news reports about it, now we know that why Modi was all out protect Mr. Adani and to safeguard his reputation. So unfortunately, and this also shows that how this reminds me the Nobel laureate, the professor of economics, Bengali professor of economics or Bengali American professor of economics, who stated that Indian economy is on tailspin, and on the contrary, what statistics BJP regime is presenting, those statistics provide an image or perception of shining India. So at that time, we were unable to see that if a Nobel laureate is saying that the economy is on tailspin, then why those statistics are not supporting them? And now we know after years that all these were forged, all these were manufactured by in the offices of BJP propagandists, and that is why all those industrial giants, they were on one page with BJP to achieve those that economic bubble. Recently, few days back, the report has been published that the 2% of Indian financial elites possess the 40% of Indian wealth. So this again breaks the bubble of economic development and people at peace under Modi. So this was very alarming and unfortunate. But
Right,
corporate,
right.
the
This is,
combination of
of course, the economic situation is also alarming. But lastly, Dr. Arif, how do you perceive the impacts on social fabric of India if a Modi government is re-elected for the third time?
I think it is a serious threat to the social fabric. Indians' society is already divided due to communal issues and communal concerns, flamed by the BJP and its associates. If unfortunately again they are elected to the government a third time, I think it would be disaster for social fabric of the India, and especially for the minorities who are already scared, and they don't have any legal forum left to go for their redressals. If again these executive authorities are in regime, then it would be probably detrimental for all those communities who are surviving to live a dignified life in the India.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Arif, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Dr. Asma Shakir, for joining us in today's program. Of course, when we talk about the policies of hate and fear, they might give another election win to Modi, but how it will be impacting India, it will be only time will tell us, and it will be gauged in years to come, that how it will be impacting India's international standing and India's social fabric. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.